learning lab, learning lab on debugging. So a nice little quote about debugging is, if debugging is the process of removing software bugs, then programming must be the process of putting them in. It's funny, but true, but true. So about myself, my name is Maslak Ali. I'm a software developer / analyst at NetJets. I graduated from UMass Boston in 2018 with a CS major. I'm also a Hack Diversity alumni, so I know about the process you guys are going through, and also do mentee as well, a mentor as well. In the past, I've worked for 3 companies as a software developer. Currently, I'm employed at NetJets. During my free time, of course, I'm just a normal guy, just like to play basketball. Became huge on these Somali podcasts, just like, becoming familiar with my native language and getting better at that. So my work at NetJets, I've been working here for about 2 years, and it's been stellar. It's been stellar for sure. NetJets is a private aviation company. They just tailor to private aviation, but they have this cool ferry flight program where employees can take like private jets to random places in the world. And yeah, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. They had last like 2 weeks ago, our manager and our BA went to Jamaica, and they had a free ride to Jamaica. So yeah, which is pretty nice. So this was when I was going to Boston, this Monday's work. They had a free flight to Boston, so I was like, I have to go. So I hopped on there. They have a flight simulator here, which is really realistic. Like if you go inside of the flight simulators, they look like real life. I don't know what kind of graphics card or whatever they're using, but and then they move too. I have a little video or something. I don't have it in the slideshow, but they move as well. So you can feel it inside once you're inside the simulator, what the actual pilots that do their training, what they feel. So it's a really nice company. So just jumping into it, what is debugging? So debugging, I'd say it's just locating and removing bugs. All programs, no matter how good they're written, they have some sort of bugs, abnormalities, or people just like step on each other's toes and caused a bug or anything like that. So debugger is a software tool to help test and inspect our code. And it's really useful, and I'm gonna tell you why. So the programs we write don't always do exactly what they're supposed to do. Sometimes it's due to like a user error where a user gives in the wrong input. Other times it could be just like a bug, a code that got changed and nobody noticed that. So we need a tool to see what is going on inside of the code, and that's what debugging is. So debugging allows us to stop and start code at runtime, which is going to be really helpful for you guys when you actually do start your internships. So debugging terminologies to know these are the 3 main debugging terminologies. A breakpoint, which is just a point where the program pauses executing, stops right there, waits for you. A call stack, which is just the history of the execution of the program, and watches, which are variables you want to see change. My experience so far as a software developer, I am mid-level. I've been working for about 4 years as a software developer. I'd say now 80% of my time is spent like just researching a problem. A lot of the code bases that you guys are going to go into, they're already going to have the code. You're never going to start from scratch. Something similar to what you guys are doing with the team project at Hack Diversity, where they give you a base project to start off with. That's most likely the most likely scenario that's going to happen. So you're going to be jumping into a code base that's already built, and you're just going to be adding features and fixing stuff. And debugging helps you understand like the context of the problem. It helps you fix and test code, and it helps you naturally read code as well. There are two architectures that applications are following. The first one is monolithic applications, and then the second one is microservice architectures. So the monolithic applications, they're just one huge code base. They don't have different Git repos or nothing like that. All the code is in one. They are trying to move away from this and more into like this kind of architecture where they divided the subsections into this. And this is really helpful because you're able to not only like remove pieces and replace them, of the code, but you're also able to like easily find where an error is happening. Say we had an inventory service here, right? And it was causing a problem. Like we would know immediately if it was in a micro service architecture, we would know immediately because this call right here, this REST API would fail. And with monolithic applications, they only have one entry point. So you come in through here and then it does a bunch of stuff all by itself. And it's hard to maintain and it's hard to work with other people on the same code base because of that. But with this one, somebody can be working on inventory service, another person can be working on the storefront web app, another person can be working on the account database, and they're not going to be stepping on each other's toes. And that's really helpful. So debugging tools that I use on the regular, Visual Studio Code and IntelliJ. Visual Studio Code is the main one for all front-end work, anything related to front-end. It's the fastest, it spins up the fastest, and it's just like natively support, and it's intended for front-end work. And IntelliJ is the bigger guy, has been around for a long time. It's pretty good on Java, it's pretty good on .NET, it's pretty good on a lot of the back-end applications, I'd say. It's more flushed out, and they do have like a heavier licensing fee or something. It's harder to get like, licensing for IntelliJ. So my focus for this lab is just to show you guys two real world examples of a bug or a feature request that I worked on. And so our application contains a Groovy Grails backend and a React front end. This type of program is called full stack development because you're both working on the front end and the back end. So our front end contains the layouts, the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, all the UI stuff. And our back end contains our functions, logics, database, and server communication. The reason why they never ever, and you never ever want to do that and put function inside of the front end code, and I'm gonna show you guys in a minute, is because the client, whoever is like seeing your website, they have access to the code. It doesn't matter what you do here, they will always have access to it. They'll be able to see exactly what you're doing in here. And I'll show you why that is. And that's why they separate the back end of the front end. The back end is more secure. It has a lot of security around it. You make sure you validate everything that's coming in, and you put all the business logic and protect the business logic inside of the back end. The front end is just like for visualization. So this is most of the companies you guys are going to be going into, they have a JIRA process. So meaning like they have a 2-week sprint cycle. You start at work, and then after 2 weeks, you end that work basically after the code goes through PR and all that. So this is like a real world example of what I would get. Like we'd have like the team name here. So it's Rapum 1052. And then we'd have a title. So it says owner can't book a flight. And then you'd have an estimation. So this -3, most likely, most places are gonna be doing that agile framework where you estimate how long the story is gonna take you. And for you guys coming in, I would always estimate on the higher end side of things, just under promise and over deliver. It's true, it's really true. So description, so it says after logging in, an owner can't book a flight. Their flight order is correct, but the system is not processing their flight request. All right, so we're gonna jump to the code. We're gonna check it out. The first thing I always do when I get a problem like this is, first of all, understand what's given. So it says given, let me spin it up first. Let me spin up the application first. All right, so here's our flight search demo application. We have, and now I try to, so I'm logged in. After logging in, an owner can't book a flight. Their flight order is correct, but the system is not processing the flight. So it says, given these criteria, and then so we put those criteria in. So the origin is Boston, the destination is Los Angeles, the date is said 03/04. 2023, and then it said any number of passengers. So let's just say 3 passengers. We search, here we are. So we met the given part, right? And oops, we met the given part. And now it says the acceptance criteria. When an owner clicks book, the flight request gets sent to our systems, a 200 status okay returned, and flight goes into booked state. So in order to do that, Chrome has this inspect tool where you can check out all the network calls that are going out. So now we're gonna click booked and see what's going on. We click booked, it's not in booked status, and we get a 500 internal error. When you first come into the company, they're gonna help you set this up, like, get the application up and running. There's gonna be a team of people. You're not gonna be alone on this. So they're gonna help you get the application started up and running. But then after that, what I like to do is just, I like to find this call. And this is what I meant by the inspect tool, which is really, really powerful. You can right click anything, any button, and just click inspect, and it'll take you to that portion of the code. And then on top of that, you can like navigate around it. So if we go into the source, I would use like IntelliJ, like for this kind of stuff. I would just like do a company-wide search on like /save, find that /save function, find that it's a book flight. So then there's two ways to do it. You can set up a debugger in Visual Studio Code, or this is the thing I wanted to demo you guys. This tool is available on every website. Any website you go to, if you go to Google, if you go to Facebook, you're able to see their source code. So with that, you can like, people try to find ways into bypassing a network or anything like that. So that's why it's very like, security is like utmost for us. Like we never put any logic, we never put any type of data processing inside of the front end. All we do is just fetch and receive calls in the front end. So here's the cool part of the debugger. We put a breakpoint in here. Now we're going to refresh the page. We still have the debugger on there. We're going to do the same call again. 03, 05, 04, 20, 23, any number of passengers. So we have a breakpoint here. We click book. Bang, we're here. This is not even like, nobody download. I didn't download Visual Studio. We're not using any like special tools or anything. This is just the Chrome browser, and it's able to tell you exactly what's going on. You're able to see the payload. We have a book flight with a payload of 6, and we're sending it to fetch. So this is a JSON payload. So we have a method, it's a post method. Let's check out our backend application, try to find that controller. And like I said, a lot of these type of things, they're gonna help you out with, like, especially like in terms of setting it up. Most backend services, they have somewhere where they put URL mappings. For Groovy Grails, they put it all in one application called URL mappings. But you just find the /save, and you can do like project-wide search. So if it was a .NET application, same thing with the .NET application. They put it inside the controllers for them, but they always have like the / endpoint somewhere. So you just find that endpoint, and then you can just click it and then go inside of that controller. So we have so my IntelliJ is not set up with the Groovy Grails. I think the IntelliJ said it was complaining about it. It was like newer or something. So we find here and we find save. So here we go. We put a breakpoint there, and here's what's powerful about the breakpoints. Remember that microservice architecture I was showing you guys? So we have a front end. We don't have a monolithic application. In this case, we have a front end and a back end. And so this is a micro architecture where we have the front end. You're able to jump around. You're able to jump like from breakpoint to breakpoint. So we're at this breakpoint right now, but then we also put another breakpoint here in the save flight, which is where it comes to. So we're gonna put a breakpoint there as well. And then we're just gonna click the step over button. You see how like it automatically just switched to the application, to the IntelliJ application. And now you're able to see exactly what's going on. So we just step over. We do have an error. It says error, 1 errors, field error in object, single flight ID is rejected value. So it's saying the ID is a rejected value. Okay. And the cool, let me see if it will let me do. No, IntelliJ is not set up for that. But you can evaluate expressions as well without having to rerun the code. You can like do whatever kind of command you want to run here. You can evaluate it here before you actually run it, just to see what it's going to be before you run it. So here we're saying like the ID we're passing it, my bad. The ID we're passing it is wrong. So we can check out the network calls. I think it's a saving. So it's still in pending status, but we check out the ID and yeah, I said field error in object single flight, on field ID rejected value, type book flight payload 6. So we can check out some of the validation stuff it does with that ID. A lot of the code, everything you do in the backend is going to be validated. Anything that comes in is going to be validated. Most of the time is taken care of by some framework like Grails, Spring Boot. I'm pretty sure you guys heard of that one. C#, the .NET Core. Most of those kind of like security stuff are going to be taken care of by the library for you. So in this case, so it just says ID is non-nullable, and we have to validate the ID. So in this case, I just go into the code, go back to the source code here. All right, I'm gonna let it play from the other terminal, just let it play. That means just continue executing the code. And now we're back here and we see that server error. We have a 500 internal error. So it says payload. We're looking, payload is an ID. So if we look back in the code, and like I said, like the majority of my time is spent like this, especially as a backend developer, because backend developing, like the code is already there for you. You're just going to be like doing a lot of support work or a lot of like adding new features or anything like that. But here we do see that ID is a non-nullable false, but its type is a long. Its type is a long, which is just a number. And in here, the type is an entire object. We're passing it both a book flight and a payload. We're passing it an object, and all it's looking for is a number. So the number it's looking for is just payload.6. But here's the tricky part. Whoever like created this application, they named payload instead of like a different name. So they have a payload object, right? But then they also have another .payload object that contains the 6. And this is a tricky part about working with a lot of people and like multiple people touching like one code base. Our code base is some of them are like the stuff we were moving away from, they're like 12 years old. So it's like 12 years of people just working on one code base and adding features and whatnot. So somebody's going to make mistakes or like they might name a variable something else that someone is not expecting or anything. But in this case, we have a payload object, and inside of that, we have another payload object called 6. So in that case, we just, I'm going to stop the debugging and pass it payload.payload. So in here, we have the payload object, which is just like both objects. We don't want to pass it the type. We just want to pass it this. So we do payload.payload. We run the application, stop all the breakpoints, let it play. All right, refresh. Boston, Los Angeles, 01, 04, 20, 23, 03. All right, this time we click booked. We're here. The IntelliJ, we're at the IntelliJ breakpoint. This time we don't have no errors. You see, this has 0 errors. Like I said, when you guys come into the job, somebody's gonna help you guys set this up. Like this whole debugging thing, it's pretty simple to set up, but somebody's gonna help you set it up. And then once you're able to debug, you're able to execute and just like go through step line at a time, just see what's going on, see all the variables, And it's a very, very powerful tool, especially early on in your career. I've learned that like the tech leads, the seniors, the people that are higher up, they have used this tool so much times that it's kind of like embedded inside of their head, where they're able to just like look like sometimes I'm impressed, like our lead, he's able to like look at code and just be able to figure out exactly what is going on, just because he spent a considerable amount of time, 5-6 years on that one single code base. And then B, he's used the debugger so much times that he doesn't need to like understand what this is doing. You know, he just kind of understands it. And now we have 0 errors, and our application looks like it's returning a status 200 with book is booked true. So we're going to let it play. Go back to our front end application. And there we go. It's in booked status. If you don't want to hit no breakpoints, you can click do not set any breakpoints. And then we can refresh this real quick. Do it again one more time. 03, 04, 20, 23, any passengers. And then if they click booked, it's in booked status. And we can check out the network calls. We do see a save. Last time it was giving a 500 internal error. This time 200. So that was like the first story. That probably, you know, I am mid-level, so it probably take me like 3 days as a mid-level to figure it out. And after I do that story, I send it off to peer review work. Somebody's going to review your work, make constructive criticism, especially if you're doing like a lot of validation or any type of like, if you're doing more than like 20 lines of code, expect a lot of comments. Just because people are opinionated, especially, you know, people that have been there longer, they're more opinionated, and they have better ways of doing things. So that's just one story. Another story could be where we remember that we had like the interaction with the front end, and this was like very visual, and you can see it and you can feel it. But sometimes you get stories where it's just back end work, where all you have is just an API. I know my Postman is somewhere here. Sometimes you just have like an API and you have a backend service. There's no front end, there's no visual, there's no nothing that's visual or anything like that. So here's the second story. We have a flight center is no longer able to search flights by date. It's a 3-pointer, meaning it will take me roughly 3 days to complete it. It has a description. It says since release cadence R 2022.6, flight center is no longer able to search flights by date. So they're given a start date, they're given an end date, and the acceptance criteria is given a start and an end date. All flights within that date range should be returned. A 200 status okay is returned. These kind of tools are called interior tools. Their clients or whoever the business is serving do not have access to these kind of tools. And NetJets has a lot of these kind of tools, small little mini tools that helps everybody gets their job done better and faster. We have tools for like impersonating an owner. In case they have an error, we can go into their account automatically and able to like see what's inside it. We have tools like analytic tools to see like, they have some payment services that happen on a regular like monthly basis on the 24th. And so we have the ability to debug that as well. So they have a lot of interior tools that technically do not have a front end. So all you have is just like, this is it. So this is a Postman. Postman is literally just like Google Chrome. If I wanted to, I could use Google Chrome. I could just hit that URL. I get a 500 internal error. I wonder why I get a 500 internal error. It should be like this. It should be empty status code 200. Huh. Oh, we are passing it something. That's why. So Postman, it just allows you to manipulate these network calls without using a front end. It allows you to manipulate this get call, for instance. You see this get call, but this get call, we don't have any payload we're passing. We're not passing anything to it. But in Postman, you can make it call anything. And these kind of tools, they're good for like debugging, but they're also a security risk as well because they allow like malicious attackers to like really test your application and like do weird stuff you wouldn't be expecting them to do, you know, whether it's cross-site scripting, whether it's like trying to get access to that database, whether it's like anti-forgery cookies. There's a ton. They have an entire section in computer science called security that people focus on. Like it's an entire trade, and they have their own like rigorous way of doing things. Well, most companies you go into, you're going to be also doing the security work as well. So they're going to be relying on you to be make sure the application is secure and all that. But like I said, a lot of these frameworks nowadays, they're pretty big and they encompass a lot of these security and vulnerabilities. They take care of them for you already. So we're just going to hit that service. We're going to check out what's going on. Ooh. Sorry, I have the paid version of IntelliJ and I never updated the license. They have the community edition of IntelliJ as well. But the paid version, I think like if you don't update your license, you only get like 30 minutes or something. That's why I really don't like IntelliJ like that either. All right, I just have to start it back up. But like I said, when you're new to the job, somebody's gonna help you know these little commands that you run to start up the application. Somebody's going to help you start up the application and somebody's going to help you get into debug mode. But then what you do after you get into debug mode is going to be up to you and the majority of the work. I'd say like back-end code is a lot easier to debug and see what's going on than front-end code. The thing with the front-end code is that it jumps. This is a very simple example in our case, this React app, which only has like a couple of sources inside of the localhost. So it just has like a couple of sources inside of here, but like real projects are going to be all over the place, and it's a lot harder to follow debugging because React code jumps. It's going to jump from here, and then it's going to go into a random node package like that you're dependent on, and it's a lot harder to debug. While backend work is much more linear. It's steps at a time. So our backend is ready. You click debug. Connected to the debugger, and it started up. Yeah, backend code is just like it goes from here, then it goes into here, maybe into this render function, then it jumps back. But you're able to see it and follow it very easily. Front end code jumps. You're going to go from controller to controller, then another controller is going to change a state, and then that state is going to trigger an action, and then it's going to make you jump to another random place, and it is a little bit more confusing. And that's why we never like want to put any like real hard logic in the front end, because of that reason of like it's hard to follow. It's very hard to follow. All logic or anything that you're processing should happen in the back end. So our application is started up. We click send. Sorry, let me read the acceptance criteria one more time. So it says 0103, 0103. So we want 01 2023 to 04 2023. I'm going to send it again. So sometimes you'll get stuck in a loop like this, like where it just keeps looping into itself. And if you ever wanted to just get out of there, you just uncheck this one or disable, right click and disable the breakpoint, and then it'll make you jump to the next one. So in this case, I gave you guys the solution. Remember how like the last one wasn't returning anything? That was because of the dates, but I'm wondering why it's not working. But the intended exercise was for this date, year, month parser. So we have a flight coming in, and I wish we can inspect. Let me see if I can. Oh, we can. Cool. So what it's doing is, in the real world, it wouldn't read from a file, but in our case, we are reading from a flights.json file. And then we're just adding those flights into our in-memory database. In the real world, you're going to be using a real database. But here's the powerful thing about like debugging is you're able to see exactly what all these variables are. You're able to see what it is. Like you have an it in here, it.date, but you don't know what it is. So you're able to see exactly what it is. So it is like the iteration. If you're not very familiar, and I wasn't very familiar either when I first started with Grails, is it has all these nice little syntax rules that make developing a lot easier. And yeah, you're able to see exactly what's in here. So we have the date 03/2023/01. So it's parsing that date and it's giving back a date object called flight date of that parse. So if we step over, we're able to see a flight data in here that has Wednesday, March 1st, 2023. And yep. So that's our date object. And then we're comparing that date object with the start date. I'm wondering if the evaluator would work here. I hope it works. No. Yeah, the IntelliJ version I have right now is a little bit too newer for the Grails application. You have to do extra configuration. And when it comes to stuff like that, somebody's gonna help you out, guys. So it's like there's gonna be a team of people to help you set up this debugger. They're gonna get you to this point, and then it's up to you to figure out. But what I wanted to do get from this exercise was this date parser should have been day. You know, we're missing a day in here because we have a year, we have a month, but we're missing a day. So I'm gonna let it play, disable all the breakpoints. Add the day, and make sure that it's compiling. And honestly, like my first year when I first came in, I started off at Liberty Mutual, and usually just like as a new guy, you always take the low hanging fruit, the stuff that are like, you know, like easy to complete, and that helps you understand the code base a lot better. You know, I mean, you're not going to jump into like API gateways and trying to deploy an application and all those CI/CD pipelines and all that from like the jump. It's just like incremental improvements. So you do one story that you get a little bit more familiar, then you do another story, and then you start doing production support, and then eventually get to the team lead. So we started the debugger, it's about to run, and yeah, the debugger running. Click send, and we get the dates back. And in this form exercise, I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but it shouldn't have returned anything without that day, without adding that day schedule. So that was a quick demo. I know it seemed like you know, I was jumping to a lot of different code bases and all that, but once you're like, if you're spending 8 hours a day on one particular thing, you're gonna pick up on it. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're spending 8 hours a day and you're getting paid for it, you're gonna pick up on whatever that is, you know. And when I was first coming in, I was surprised. I was like, to see the scale an enterprise works at, first at Liberty Mutual, which has like over 10,000 employees. And just to see the scale that they work at and like all the programs that they have going on, the CI/CD pipeline, and just to get like the eagle vision of it, that was an amazing experience. And then from there on, it just kind of like, it stuck with me. That the experience I had at Liberty Mutual just kind of stuck with me. And I've been finding other jobs, and now I'm here at NetJets, and I'm really liking this company. It's their code base is all over the place. We touch on all aspects of like front end, back end, CI/CD pipelines, Jenkins, AWS, Fargates is all over the place. And I like to stick on those kind of side of things. There was this one company I worked for in between after Liberty Mutual called Boyle Transportation. And what I really didn't like about that company was because I knew exactly what I was going to do. Like coming into work, I knew exactly what I was going to do, like exactly what I was going to do. And you never want to kind of be in that kind of position. Personally, not for me. I don't want to know what I'm doing for the day. You know, I want to come in and be confused and then just like kind of figure out things on my own. You know, if you know exactly what you're going to be doing, you come in here and you start typing, then you're not really challenging yourself, you know? So always challenge yourself, always pick up a story you're not comfortable with, and that's going to help you expand your knowledge base and make you a better developer for it. So that is conclusion to our little debug. And I'm going to have like the code base. I'm gonna have the GitHub code base available for you guys to check out. Debugging. And I know you guys have used GitHub before. Yep. So I'm gonna have this code base available for you guys. You guys can check it out. It's super easy to set up. You have the React front end, and then you have the back end, and then it tells you the steps on how to start up each of those services. And most of the time, like I said, when you're given like a project and you come into a new project, they're gonna have some sort of GitHub. It's not gonna be exactly GitHub. Ours, we use Bitbucket, but it's a Git version control tool. You're going to be copying exactly like this. You're going to be copying the code. You're going to be pasting in a terminal. You're going to open it up in Visual Studio or whatever IntelliJ IDE you use, and then you're going to start your work. Somebody's going to help you get started on it, whatever company you get into. Somebody's going to help you start that application, and then they're going to give you probably like a small piece to fix of it, and then that's how you start. And yeah. So the remainder of the time, I'll just open it up, leave it up to questions. If you guys have any questions or anything like that.
How often do you think someone should debug their code?
I didn't notice you there, Jonathan. I did. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, I was just paying attention to the presentation. That's why.
Oh, okay. Yeah, man. At first, for front end work, if you're given something like visual, like, hey, make this text bolder, or you know, that was literally my first time when I came into this company. It was like, make this text bolder. It wasn't a hard story, and it was something I could do and I was comfortable with. And 20. And in those kind of instances, debugging is always harder in the front end. I'm not gonna lie. Debugging is always hard
because it's constantly changing, and then it might have like it's different because when you're working on the back end, you can see everything, like the line, it brings up everything, whereas in the front end, you might like something else might change, and so you have to like constantly like look over other things.
Yeah, and the code bases is a lot too. They use a lot of like node packages and all this, and you got to like set up your debugger where you can skip anything that goes inside of here. And then even inside of here, it just like randomly jumps. It's very hard to follow. So debugging is not the best suited for front-end development. It is suited like if you're doing like some state management or something like that, you know, which most likely all the applications do have. But for something like visual, like, hey, like when you hover over this button, make sure it's like a different color. That really wouldn't require like, debugging or anything like that. You would visually inspect the tool, and then you would change its its CSS in here. You would change it to a different color in here or something, and then that's how you would test it. And then that's how you would test it. But debugging really comes in handy if there's a bug, not a feature. So there's we separate our work as well. There's feature cards. So those are like new additions we're adding. Debugging doesn't really help you with that because you're adding feature, and then we have bug and /support cards. And in those instances, it's going to help you out big time because you're able to just like jump directly into it. Like if you go back to that little slide where you have all this like architectures, you're most likely going to go into a scenario like this. Like everyone moved away from these monolithic applications. Everybody got into these. And in these instances, you'll know exactly where the error is happening. If you're getting a 500 network call from here, it's coming from account service. So you'll open up that service. You'll most likely use Postman or something else to mimic the call. And then you're going to check out, and then debugging comes in handy, and it's the best in those kind of instances.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But like I said, like when I was first coming into it, and I was like fresh out of college and all that, I didn't know debugging like that. I didn't really use debugging in college. I didn't know it's like use cases and all that, but it's pretty indispensable once you do come in. And it was just like, so somebody showed me the ropes. When I first came in, it's like you have a team, we have a group of 4 people, and they're gonna show you the ropes. So enjoy your time there, enjoy like learning. Yeah, it's gonna get a lot easier. It would get a lot easier, like especially like if you know like a couple of programming languages. And now we have like ChatGPT, from last year. I did this presentation last year, but from last year and this year, it's been a dramatic shift in terms of like how people are able to learn, what the barrier of entry is for anybody to learn anything new. You have ChatGPT. So if I open up ChatGPT, right? And I go into my code base, and I don't know exactly what this is doing, right? I can just like copy this. Right now, companies, they don't have like contracts. They're still like setting up contracts with ChatGPT and all that. So we personally cannot use ChatGPT. They let us use Amazon Code Whisperer, which is just terrible, but they don't have licensing. So you're most likely not going to be able to use it. But for like, personal projects, schoolwork, or anything like that, that you're confused about like a particular problem, instead of like, I used to use Stack Overflow, and I thought I was going to use that the remainder of my career, but with ChatGPT, you just tell it, hey, explain this Grails application, explain this Grails code to me, and it'll tell you. But it gets very, very granular. Like this ChatGPT thing, I use it for like personal projects and whatnot. Obviously, I'm not paying for it. They want you to pay for it now. That's why it's like super slow. Yeah, it's that. And then we have the GitHub Copilot, which is this little guy right here. These guys have been like indispensable tools, and things are going to get a lot better. Things are going to get a lot better with these 2 guys. Like all this boilerplate code and all this is going to be taken care of for you. Like if you told me to write a find flights future function or anything like that in JavaScript right now, I wouldn't know how to do that, because the syntax, I would just use like Stack Overflow. How do you send a payload on Stack Overflow, But with the GitHub Copilot, you can just like tell it, give it like some comments or something, and be like, hey, create a new flight, or create a post method to slash airports to save the flight. I don't know, to save the flight. All right, you could tell that, and you just start typing out portions of the code, and it would finish it for you. See how it's doing that already? And our company, they give us permissions to use GitHub Copilot's competitor, which is the Amazon Code Whisperer. So when you do start the new job, make sure to ask them like what type of like AI can you use? Like what's their thing with the catching with the AI? But our company, they let us use like Amazon Code Whisperer, which is just like another IntelliJ plugin. Instead of this GitHub Copilot, it's called Amazon Code Whisperer. And it allows us to write these kind of like boilerplate formalities. You know, we don't want to have to, the barrier to entry for software development is literally, it has changed. And you don't have to memorize things anymore. Like you're going to have this GitHub Copilot, and I'm pretty sure Windows 12 is going to have some sort of ChatGPT or Copilot in there, just because of how fast things are moving. I literally did this last year, and these tools were not available. This exact presentation, I did it last year, and these tools were not available. So things are changing for the better, definitely for the better. Less boilerplate code, less memorization, more natural language understanding. You're gonna be talking to this thing, you're gonna tell it what to do in natural languages, and then it's gonna explain it to you, you know. So you guys have like a very, very bright future ahead, man. Things are looking good. I honestly thought I was gonna do the same thing for you know, for the rest of my career, for another 30 years or so. But at this point, it's like everything is just in the air. Like we're not sure exactly what's gonna be happening with these tools, but I think it's like a good thing. But yeah, thank you guys for showing up. I'm not sure how I can I'm gonna stop sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your time, guys. Do I stop or?
Yeah, I suppose if you're done with it and no one's asking questions, I think you can just stop. Unless anyone has questions, but I don't think anyone does.
Yeah, the only thing I would like to ask if we can have the
The code base?
yes, please.
Yeah, definitely.